how come we're not asking if the Rams are going to use Foles to go up to get Mariota? And they just signed Nick Fairley. Is Les Snead on the phone?
Les Snead is on the phone.
All right, the general manager of the St. Louis Rams. Are you using Nick Foles and Fairley to trade up in the draft? Why aren't people asking you about your bargaining chips, Les?
Well, I can tell you this: deleting Nick Foles and Nick Fairley are not the solution to any of our issues.
Okay. So delete. Okay, so we at least get that out of the way. These are keepers in your mind for the Rams.
These are definitely keepers.
Okay. Do you? So let's start this whole process about the Foles for Bradford trade, because you and I have spoken on the air and off the air, and you were adamant that Bradford was going to be your guy moving forward. At what point did you entertain the idea that Bradford wasn't perhaps the guy that the Rams would be using going forward anymore at the quarterback position, Les?
Well, here's the timeline of it all. Obviously, we've had a little bit of a quarterback conundrum here. Mainly, you've had a former first overall pick, NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year player who couldn't get on the field the last 2 years. So that's just an unfortunate situation. Created a conundrum for us, the conundrum being we got a talented kid, but he hasn't been on the field for us, so we have used 3 QBs in that span. But at the end of the day, the kid is very talented. He's young. I've said, you look at Phil Simms' career, it took him about 6 or 7 of some ups and downs and injuries before, he thrived. So anybody with football acumen knows, you know what, you got a good QB. Getting him out of the room, removing him, is not going to help solve our puzzle. But long story short, after some news broke at the Combine, obviously I think teams took a chance to check in and see. I think over the course of a couple of weeks, they figured out we really weren't trying to move on from Sam. But in the last, probably in the past week, there's multiple teams, 2 or 3 of them got really serious. But the one thing that made the Philly thing interesting for us, because we got offered some nice draft picks, but even if we would have taken that trade, we still wouldn't have had a solution to our quarterback problem, and that's what made the Philly thing so a nice fit for us. Is guess what? We were getting also a young quarterback with talent who's got some nice metrics in terms of individual production, but more importantly for a team like us who's ready to make a move, he's won some big games in a good division.
Now,
so that's a long answer to probably a short question.
No. It's a great answer, Les, because so many people want to know how these things come about. How do the storm clouds, if you will, begin to form for lightning to strike in a deal that is so rare to see quarterbacks swapped and then draft picks swapped? You said multiple teams were interested. I'm not going to ask you for a name because I know you won't give it. But were some of the teams that approached you above your spot in the draft position? Let's just put it that way.
I think I'd have to, because we're picking 10, I think out of respect to those teams, out of respect for the human beings that are playing quarterback for them, I'll keep them quietly. But I think if you're putting your puzzle together, there's teams that were like us that have some QB issues, and or maybe not totally satisfied with what they've gotten on. There's probably more teams than like that than there are teams that are satisfied. But I think you could start. You can easily weed the ones who probably weren't involved out.
Les Snead, the Rams general manager, joining me here on the Rich Eisen show. So, when did you start looking at Foles closely to make sure that you knew you were getting back the guy that could fit in your offense and be the guy to move forward with in St. Louis?
Well, to be honest on that question, even when Sam went down at Cleveland this summer, you knew this. Depending on how this season went with Sean Austin, and what's interesting, we brought Case back, and heck, we got QBs on our team, and they had Case Keenum went 2-0 last year at the end of the season. Long story short, you knew that we needed to add even if we were going to keep Sam, we needed, as we like to call it around here, guess what? We finally got to buy a really strong insurance policy, whether that's from the draft, whether that's from individuals playing in the league. So you try to figure out which QBs might be available via trade, and you know, along the way you figure out Nick Foles could have been one, just because of the Sanchez thing there and him starting at the end, and you kind of weed the process out that way. So we started watching him during the season, and had a list of guys ready for, okay, however this works out, however we go about solving our riddle, whether it's a draft pick, whether it's a trade, whether it's a UFA signing, we got to spend a lot of energy this fall preparing for that move.
GM of the Rams, Les Snead, joining me here on the program. In the last hour, you announced the signing of Nick Fairley, Akeem Ayers yesterday. To just first blush for a fan, somebody looking at your team and what's been going on your team, off-season, in-season, the last place that you think that you might be looking at to try and shore up is a position of strength on the defensive line. So I guess the simple question of what's up with signing guys on the defensive line for you, Les?
Well, the best answer I can give is, since that's a strong point for us, and it may be the strongest part of our team right now, we want to keep that part strong and even get it stronger. And then we will definitely we're well aware of what other holes we need to fill. But at the end of the day, defense is going to be very important around here. It's got to be important in our division because we got some tough defenses in our division. So anytime we play each other, a lot of points aren't getting scored. So to compete even in this division, we got to keep people from scoring, and then we'll go from there. But long story short, we're going to keep that. We want to keep that defense strong. And
in that regard, what did you think of the Jimmy Graham acquisition by the team that's been atop your division the last 2 years?
Obviously, on paper, like this time of year, it definitely, helps the Seahawks. I think it's another weapon, another tall weapon for their offense, for their QB. So obviously, if you're a Ram, you look at that and go, okay, game's still on.
Les, what is it like for a general manager right now, where pro days are popping? You're in conversations, I imagine, with Chip Kelly, and other teams are ringing your phone. You also have a draft board that you're trying to put together. Walk me through what it's like to be Les Snead, the Rams general manager, at a busy time like right now.
Hectic and induced ADD. I can tell you that. But, hey, here's what I can tell you. I've canceled a lot of flights this week, had some pro days I was going to, and didn't make a one. That happens this time of year. But, again, the draft board thing is huge because as you add pieces in free agency, make trades, all those things, you're always looking, okay, if we don't do this, what's it look like in the draft? What's it looks like with pick 10, the second-round picks and all that? And you're going, okay, if we're okay here because there's going to be good players at certain positions in and around those picks.
Is your draft board essentially set right now? Do you think, what's your draft board looking at right now, and what you think it's going to look like the last Thursday in April? Les?
You know what? I think right now what it looks like now is that's going to be the foundation. I always say, really right now it's let's just say you got a number, and let's call it 200, and that's the key this time of year is you may have 3 players graded at that 200 area. The things that happen this time of year is, all right, who's going to be the first of those 3 players at that grade level? So definitely pro days still can affect that. Obviously physicals and medical, obviously just interviewing the player, getting a feel for the personality, the psychological, all those things. So long story short, a lot of things aren't changing. You're not changing in terms of yards, but more in terms of inches.
And do you have a player in mind, like right now, that's you and Jeff and everybody in your world have talked that this is going to be our guy? We might change our mind and have the option to change our mind, and the phone might ring and blow us out of the water with an offer, which clearly you and the Rams know can absolutely happen. But do you have a guy right now, as you and I are talking, saying this is probably going to be the first Ram that's taken in the draft?
Here's what, when you pick at 10, it's hard to have a guy. because you never know if that guy's going to be there. So really the philosophy is this. Right now, here's what we do have. We've got 10 guys we would pick. And of those 10, with a little bit of common sense, you try to figure out, a certain of those 10 probably are going before us. But if they fail, that's great. But then you try to come up with a realistic guy who's going to be at your spot. You obviously have a favorite of those. And from here, the strategy is, okay, if the favorite guy at 10 isn't there, do you pick your second favorite, third favorite, or do you try to move back? Do you try to go up and get your favorite? So that's really the talk, that surrounds 10 right now in this building.
Les, thanks for taking the time. And I don't know. I definitely feel that you've been straightforward, honest with me, as general managers don't usually do. You could definitely be honest with me if you're packaging together fairly heirs and Foles and maybe the two that you're getting to move up in the draft. They're all bargaining chips, Les. They really are.
And what will happen is our first draft, I think we moved back. Mm-hmm. Our second draft, I think we moved up and back. Mm-hmm. Last year we held pat. So I do know this. There will be some sort of trend started this year, whether we move up, whether we move back, or whether we stay pat.
Are those breadcrumbs? Are those breadcrumbs, Les? And it's up to me to try and figure out how to follow them? Did you?
Yeah, you're the wittiest of the two of us, so that is definitely your job.
Say hello to Mrs. Henderson Snead, will you please, Les?
I will always do that for you.
Thank you, Les. You take care.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.